Good Shabbos. In the second Torah portion that we read this week, called Maasei, it talks about the laws that if someone kills someone unintentionally, he was chopping with his axe and then the metal flew off of his axe and hit someone and killed him. He has to run away to the city of absorptions and he has to stay there until the high priest dies. Now, Kabbalistically speaking, why the high priest dies? Because the high priest is connected to the concept of eitz, a tree, which is life, and therefore he represents life, and therefore the one who took a life shouldn't be out together with the one who gives life. And this leads us to an interesting teaching that the room that belonged to the high priest in his preparation before the holy day of Yom Kippur, he would move into a room there for a week, and that room was called Lipszyc, the room of wood. And simply speaking, because that room was made of wood, and then it would be covered with a plaster. However, there's a mystical reason, once again, because it's connected to the high priest being a source of drawing down the blessing of life for the Jewish people, and therefore it was wood. Then the Talmud tells us in Tractate Yuma, the tractate that tells about Yom Kippur, and over there on page 8, side B, it tells us something amazing, that it used to be called the room of wood or balvati, which means protruding wood, and then later on, when it became the custom, the Jewish people fell, and therefore the high priest would use money in order to buy themselves the high priesthood place, and therefore they changed the name to Parhadrin. Parhadrin means like an official, a senator of the king. And the Talmud says, one second, why the different name? So it says, because once they were evil and they didn't deserve to be there, they would die every 12 months. Because a high priest who was not fit to enter the Holy of Holies Yom Kippur would not make it out alive. So therefore they called it Parhadrin, because just like the king is every 12 months changing his guards, his officials, so too the high priest was changed every 12 months, and therefore they called it Parhadrin. And the Rebbe shares an amazing insight that seemingly this name is only negative. Why would we call a room in the Holy Temple negative? And the reason is, actually it shows a virtue. Because this guy who bought his way into the high priesthood knows that the one before him died. And he knows that he's going to die. And nevertheless is yearning to just be in that holy of holy moment with God. On Yom Kippur, he was willing to give away his money and his life. But nevertheless, this is a sign of people that were not worthy. There were also those who were worthy, even in that era. So why are we calling it this name? So here the Rebbe gives such an amazing insight. There is the concept of Teshuvah, which has nothing to do with sin. It's just that our soul has descended and is distant from God, and thus we need to Teshuvah, return, and have our connection with God. But then there's the true meaning of Teshuvah, the simple meaning of Teshuvah. Each when a person is evil, a person sins, and then he repents, and he changes his ways. The difference between the two is that the first one doesn't create a newness, a total change within the person. The person was righteous, the person is righteous, he's just getting even closer to God. But the latter definition of Teshuvah is that the person, he was bad, and now he's new. He changed. And that is the truest definition of Yom Kippur and the truest definition of Teshuvah. From this perspective, we understand that when all of the Kohen Gadol's and their generations were all righteous, so then the room was called the tree. It was life. And even though it was covered with plaster because Yom Kippur is about Teshuvah, but the Teshuvah was driven by their connection with the life of all life. However, later on, when the generation fell, and with them the high priest fell, and now Teshuvah meant to truly change, become a total new person. Thus, the name of that room in the Holy Temple became Parhadrin, not because of the negativity involved, but because of the depth of the true definition of Yom Kippur is a person who goes through an absolute change and is someone new. And this is the deeper meaning of the high priest being connected with life. Not from one life to a higher life to a higher life, but his true power is that even if someone unintentionally got connected with death, he can do Teshuvah, become Parhadrin, a new person, and have the ultimate experience of life. Shabbat Shalom.